Yeah, all right. So I think we have quite a few of you guys all in. Thank you. Welcome to the first in a webinar series for Let's Talk XR. We are putting this thing together partly, we've been wanting to do this for a while, and we finally pulled the trigger. So this is the first in a series of many, and we will also be turning this into a podcast where you guys can follow it up afterwards and share. COVID-19 has definitely taken over worldwide. There's no other time that anything like this has happened before. And it's new ground for everybody in every industry. And, we thank all of you guys for coming in to learn a little bit more about how XR is going to be shaped by this COVID-19 issue, here in the future. And today we have an esteemed panel of guests, and each one has experience in different domains. So I'd like to welcome my fellow panelists, Greg Melling, Senior Executive over at Unity, where he has a focus on defense and automotive. Sean Pinnock from Cyberdream, VR Development Studio, and they have a hot new title that's just come out. And my fellow co-founder of BrandXR, Moody Mattan. For a lot of you, you may not know who we are, or you may have heard of BrandXR. I think it'd be good to maybe just learn a little bit about each of you before we get going. Maybe give a little bit of your background of what you're up to, how did you get here? And I'd also ask, what have you been doing during quarantine? Have you been making TikTok videos? What's the most embarrassing thing that's been going on? I kind of feel like I'm hungry for human contact. So, Moody, let me hand it over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Moody Mattan. A lot of you may know me. I'm the co-founder and CEO of BrandXR. And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to start this show was to really inform people about what's going on in this XR market and really bring the experts kind of to the forefront of the discussion. We've been working in the industry for a while now, so we've had opportunity to meet some great folks. So we're really excited to bring this Let's Talk XR webinar series and eventually podcast to everyone. So my background and kind of how I got into XR is really from the business side of things. So I was working in venture capital out in Silicon Valley, and as an associate, kind of fresh MBA grad working in venture capital. And one of the very first deals that I had invested in was in Meta, the augmented reality headset that was a competitor to the HoloLens. And I remember doing, due diligence on this deal and research about the XR market. And this was back in 2013. And I was just amazed at kind of how big of an opportunity this market was, and could kind of see the writing on the wall that this was going to become the next big thing, and really got interested in it. And so after that, I had met an angel investor, and he was really a turnaround expert. He was really good at turning around companies. He was turning around a bookbinding company in Berkeley, California. And he brought me on board, and he said, Moody, we really need to reinvigorate this company, this product line. Nobody's printing as much anymore, so nobody's binding anymore. So that business was kind of taking a nosedive, and I had this crazy idea to build virtual reality headsets out of their existing manufacturing infrastructure, and kind of built a business model around it and pitched it to the management team, and then eventually inked a deal with Google Cardboard, and that's what started a company called poised VR. And with that company, I like to say, we were kind of the cherry on top of a lot of VR marketing campaigns. So this was right around the time when Google Cardboard was becoming popular, and people were, giving away tens of thousands of Google Cardboards per marketing campaign and using it for various different uses. So we had a chance to work with, the Financial Times, with the Huffington Post, with Gensler, all these different companies on different VR marketing campaigns. And that's really where I get to some insights into the different business use cases that this technology could be applied to. And that's really where I kind of came up with the concept for BrandXR. I kind of saw these businesses wanting to create XR content for marketing campaigns, but they were having trouble with creating the content. It was kind of a totally new world for a lot of these people to even create VR content or to think about how to execute a campaign kind of from A to Z. And so that's really why I started, initially Brand VR with Kunal. And it's just now transformed into BrandXR. And really what we want to do is make creating XR experiences accessible to everyone. That's kind of how I got into it. And that's what I'm up to now. And what I've been doing on this quarantine, I've been sharpening my longboarding skills. I can say that, as a big guy, over 200 pounds, I can, get on that longboard and do pretty well. So I've been practicing. And then also yesterday, we just got a brand new bulldog puppy, and her name is Mochi, and she's beautiful. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time with Mochi here.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for that background. And I can't even believe it. Moody, no offense, you're a big guy. It's going to be like a whale on a longboard moving across the street. Yeah. Sean, tell us a little bit more about how has it been during quarantine for you, and then give a bit of background on you as well. You're more in the video game industry than maybe any one of us. How's it been?
Okay, cool. Right. So 2 different questions there, right? So how did I get to where I am, and what have I been doing? So I'm kind of realizing now, I'm a fairly young guy. I'm 30 years old, and I'm thinking there's so much stuff that I've done to get to where I am now. How do you guys, or people, how's Greg is going to answer this question, right? Because it's how do I make this? We got an hour here, right? I got to tell this story in 5 minutes, and I'll tell it in 2 minutes. So for me, with virtual reality, I think I'm maybe even kind of an odd case here, where when I was a kid, like really young, I kind of always imagined a virtual universe, right? I'd be walking down the street, and I'd be looking around, and I'd be like, oh, look, there's Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he's running at me. And people would be looking at me weird, and I'd be like, you don't understand, T-Rex is right over there. And and that kind of never went away. And it's kind of my creative side. And then as I saw these technologies come to life, like when Palmer Luckey introduced the Oculus DK1 in I think 2014, I was actually one of the initial backers. I was like, this is it. This is what I've been dreaming about since I was a little kid. And I just knew that this was the path that I was going to go down. And alongside that too, I've always loved making video games, and I've been making video games since literally as long as I can remember, and just never strayed from that path. And I plan on pursuing this the rest of my life. I really think we're just at the precipice of where this technology is going to go. And we'll talk more about that later. I'm really excited about the future of that. But what have I been doing since we've all been home? Well, here, hold on, wait, let's see if I can, you guys see those monitors over there, all that with Visual Studio open? That's when I've not been sleeping or giving my wife just enough time to make sure she knows that I'm still a halfway decent husband. I've been writing code for virtual battlegrounds and a few contracts, but mostly just keeping the game stable. So.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll talk more about virtual battlegrounds, your new release a little bit later on. But Greg, tell us about what have you been up to, and how did you get here?
Oh, geez, that's a long story. There's not enough time for that. No, I'll try to keep it short and sweet. But yeah, today I know a bunch of folks in the business. Obviously, the 3 of us have worked together on some things, but I'm a senior strategist for Unity. So at Unity, really, I'm just focused on kind of solving people's problems with technology, right? So that's what we do. We think about how we bring value. We don't really think about, Unity, we think about capabilities. So that's my full-time focus. But how did I get here? That's a long story. So I've been in the business a long time, way before you guys. I actually got in the my career started. I was a creative designer working for General Motors. So I actually went to art school. So I was a sculptor, digital modeler. Started using Alias for 3D modeling before Maya existed, and actually ended up going to work for the company that made that software, Alias Wavefront, and actually then the company brought Maya to the business. So I was running around, teaching Maya rendering on version 1 when Mental Ray was all we had, and just as a long time ago, I was carrying big computers around airports, and I don't miss that. So, but to see where technology has gone over my technical, or I'll say my technology-based career, 20 years, it's really interesting. I've always felt, no matter at what time, that the future is sort of right around the corner. And I still sort of feel it. I think about where the technology was as far as digital visualization, right? Using technology to visualize data. And, we couldn't really project what it would be in our everyday lives today. But, it's always been a progression of, data and expansion of capabilities. And it first starts out in the industrial world where there's big investments that go into technologies. But now we're seeing, consumer-based technology that it's incredibly powerful. So I'm actually, I was going to say, actually, before Unity, I spent another 10 years at Autodesk. So focused on, the media and entertainment and manufacturing technologies and things like that. So I'm just excited, every single day to do what I do. So it's a great job because I get to, solve people's problems. I love the technology. I'm super passionate about visualization. And to me, I think a lot of things came together when Pokemon Go hit the world, right? I have younger kids. They're not so young now, but they were young when Pokemon Go hit. And I knew at that time when my kids understood what augmented reality meant, I'm like, wow, all right, we've arrived. We've arrived. And so that was kind of, I think, a real big turning point for this XR technology and visualization as we know it. And I think when I look at where we've been, I think of the projection, the acceleration of technology. And we are sort of like, up here, we're still advancing, and it's becoming part of everyday life. So I'm excited about that. What am I doing today? These days, I'm not real big on quarantining, but I'm doing the best I can. I work from home, and I really haven't slowed down. So I'm just working virtually like the rest of you guys. But that's about it. So I'm excited that you guys invited me. So I'm looking forward to talking about the topic.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah. It definitely has been interesting. And I think everybody's had their own personal, situation. For some people, and I don't know, my background, and I don't even know if I introduced myself. My name's Kunal Patel. Hi, everyone. I'm CTO of BrandXR, and I've had this background that's been mixed within technology, video game development, and business. And so I'm kind of like this hybrid. But everybody's had this unique experience, I guess, at home. For myself, I have a 10-month-old baby daughter that was born. And so in some ways, this quarantine has kind of helped having a lot more time at home. I actually saw her walk for the first time. Yeah, it was amazing. It was oh my God, I think she might be walking. And then boom, she did it. And so it's it's amazing. And, in terms of where things are going in XR, part of it comes from just having these small interactions at home and kind of going through TikTok and just seeing all the creativity that happens with what people are doing even with video. And I think, all these people are hungry for communication. They want to, teach something or show something. And for me, the thing that I gravitated towards with XR was really communication. How is it that I can convey something that I know or something I want to do with that? And in our background working at BrandXR, we're working with a couple enterprises, and it has been accelerating over time. But I want to say there's definitely a lot of proof of concepts, some trials and things like that going on. Greg, you're closer to this than anybody else, I guess, being at Unity. How do you think COVID-19 has changed things in terms of the enterprise? Has it slowed things down? Has it sped things up? What's happened?
Yeah, I think, just at a high level, it's really made a lot of my large enterprise customers rethink their communication strategies in the midst of this, right? So we've been focused on helping our largest customers, those enterprise customers that have a lot of employees that are used to going to work every day, right? How do those same people be very productive at home, right? So how they get access to the tool sets that they use to work, how do they manage distribution of files? And more importantly, how do they communicate, right? So if you're a company that make physical products, you're used to working in close teams where you can actually explore capabilities and features and how it works and what it looks like and point and tape and mark things up and make decisions that way. And now, they really have to work and function effectively in a virtual communication environment. And so, I'd say that's the biggest one, helping customers with that transition to a virtual collaboration setting. And I think what we're seeing is that in a short period of time, companies have really changed the way they are communicating, how they're experiencing design and their products and communicating instead of getting on airplanes. Myself, I spend a lot of time in airport and, haven't been in the airport since the beginning of March. I kind of like it. So I think that it's really changed the way they have to communicate. And I think what we're seeing is that some of these communication changes are going to stay, right? They're going to say, you know what? We are productive. We have figured this out. Why do we need to go back entirely to traveling and being together, And so I think that there's going to be an immediate change. I think we're going to shift back to somewhat of a normal situation in communication, but I do think some of the things and the tools and the communication mechanisms that people have adopted are going to stay.
Sean, you've recently launched a video game title, VR title of Virtual Battlegrounds. It reached number 2 on Steam, I saw, which is amazing. Like literally Half-Life was the title ahead of you. That's good company to have, but can you share a little bit like what that experience was like? I got to think it was actually very chaotic. You're building with a team and you're releasing. Like, how was that whole experience? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So, this is something we've been working on for years, right? So putting this game out was a really big deal for us. And I was actually talking to my marketing guy, and he's got all the data, and he's like, Sean, this pandemic is just, I don't know what's going to happen. Like everything is, he lives in New York too. So he's really kind of feeling the brunt of it. And he's like, but we know that right now, a lot of people are home and a lot of people are playing video games. I don't think there's going to be a better time to release this game than there is right now. And that's so we made the decision to pull the trigger. Looking back, hindsight's 2020, the game, we could have used another month or 2 of work, but still the sales were really good. Like you said, we were number 2 behind Half-Life, still top selling VR game, and we're going to keep supporting it for long tail. So it's been a pretty crazy business cycle. I think right now, during this whole pandemic, a lot of people are playing games more. VR is definitely really popular right now. Headsets are selling out, and I think that's going to have a long-term effect on the popularity of XR and games. So it's been pretty fortuitous for us, but we still have a lot of work ahead of ourselves to get to where we really want to be for this game.
How's the feedback been like from the game players? And actually, I don't know if like we've shared with the listeners, like, can you say what is your game? Actually,
yeah, it's called Virtual Battlegrounds. It's a VR battle royale. Feedback has been mostly positive. We've noticed that people that take the time to learn the game really, really enjoy it. But we've had a lot of friction with people that haven't played a game like ours. They played maybe similar games and are expecting it to behave like those other games. So we're doing things to make it easier and more accessible for people that have experiences with other games, similar games, to jump into ours. And we've already been mitigating a ton of those things. So, but overall, we've got a really organic community that loves the game. We've got high daily active users that didn't really see any droppings. So I think the long-term outlook is pretty positive right now for us. We just got to keep supporting it and then making it a little, I think, more accessible and for new users.
That's great. We're spending a lot of time at home. There really is, so many things you can do to fill that time. And I think video games has definitely seen an uptick on all that. In terms of the hardware industry, going back to you, Greg, have you seen anything out there in terms of has it grown? Has it slowed down? Has the COVID-19 situation affected just even the ability to sell hardware? How's that part been?
I would say actually the business, and I can't really disclose too much, but our business, the company I work for, it's been very healthy. And to Sean's point, gaming has definitely been on an uptick, right? People are consuming a lot of home-based entertainment. So I think that anybody from, Netflix or, even any game titles, EA or whoever, I mean, everyone's doing pretty well as people consume content from home. As far as hardware goes, I think, there is probably some challenges in that supply chain. That's been a big issue. I can say when it comes to actually head-mounted displays, that business has continued to be pretty healthy. We've had a lot of new entries in the market in the last couple of years. They've been fantastic. The new products, HoloLens 2, the Vario, more of an industrial application or industrial grade HMD, just fantastic acuity. The devices have really gotten to the point where they're delivering, I'd say, kind of a level of presence, which really hasn't been there. The older devices and also the software side of it, we weren't able to deliver, the frame rates and the resolution. And now you've got great frame rates, great resolution, and great content. And it's really, we're starting to really cross over to this highly real, very viable. People don't get sick anymore, when they're on or when they're inside of most of these HMDs. A lot of those problems have been solved. The thing I'm excited about, though, are the everyday applications, hardware every day, right? When we start to get wearables that are augmenting information within our environment all the time, right? Because right now, not too many people have, a head-mounted display, in our back pocket that we just, throw on. The closest thing we have to XR with us all the time is actually, our phone. So people use their phone. That's their lens into an information-based spatial reality, right? So I actually look towards the time where we have more of like a everyday wearable layer on, the glasses, my reading glasses, augmenting information. So I think we're going to see more and more and more of that. There's been some tremendous advances in the military. Microsoft has been doing some great work, for pushing the envelope with their military contracts. And I think we'll start to see some of those things trickle themselves into the consumer level hardware. So I think we're going to continue to see more progression of that tech. And it is going to be, a matter of probably a couple of years where you're starting to see the relevance of that everyday, all the time wearable that's augmenting information. So that's kind of what
I mean, definitely the dream. Like for someone like me that's wearing glasses and it's just like, this is my life anyways. Right. So like if I could just have better glasses than I have right now, that really would be a dream come true on my side. And plus my glasses, I've just had them forever. My wife wants me to get rid of them and get something new. And I'm like, no, the new Air glasses will be here. They can hold out. So, Moody, you fly down here to where I'm at in Orlando quite a bit. And you're definitely like working on like the business side of things. So, Orlando is known for its tourism, definitely like with all the theme parks and all the things to do. And that's taken a huge hit, obviously from like consumers like wanting to go to Disney or Universal or SeaWorld or, to the beaches or even just like business, like conferences and things that get held here. From your perspective, tourism, and travel, like how is that going to change? Can XR help with that? Where do you see that playing together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, now, especially with Disney, one of the strongest things about Disney is their IP, right? So everyone loves Mickey Mouse. He's like, one of the most iconic symbols, I think, out there. And so I think when you have that type of iconic IP that Disney has, you can almost bring the show home, to the people, and you can do that with XR in a totally new way. So, like with the invention of Disney Plus, you can see them already bringing like their movies and shows and things like this into the homes. I think the next step of that is going to be bringing these augmented and virtual reality experiences into the homes. So especially when you can have a similar style of Disney, theme park ride experience, if you can offer an experience that's very similar to that inside the own home, inside like your children's bedroom, say, I think that's a very powerful experience. And even this morning, I just saw Disney came out with their first AR experience with Mickey, and so they're kind of like dipping their toes in it right now. And I think you're just going to continue to see more and more. I think like on a whole, a lot of these things will become like virtualized. So take conferences, for instance, like these big conferences like CES and even smaller, kind of more niche conferences. I think a lot of those types of events are going to become virtualized. And kind of, imagine being able to step into like a virtual convention center, and then you can go and see the different, virtual booths of these companies. You could check out their products, see what they're offering, and perhaps even have a real conversation with a person there who's, maybe on the sales team, and they can help you out. And it's a real conversation with an avatar, and you can kind of get a little bit of that sense of presence. Like we've moved from like telephone to kind of like video calls to in VR, you can have like a little bit of this presence where you can kind of be more engaged and get to know someone better, at least on a little bit of a personal level. So yeah, I think those, and then also with things like volumetric capture, I think that's going to be important with being able to bring some of the shows, into the homes of the audience. So, I know we've talked with some ballet companies who are obviously not putting on their ballet shows anymore. So how can you have a ballet performance in your living room and like kind of have this really incredible experience? And I think the business models are just starting to get figured out there. And that's something, Greg, maybe you could talk a little bit about is, kind of these new business models you're seeing popping up with the invention of XR and these new XR technologies.
Yeah, one of the things that you're starting to talk about a little bit is the application of XR in entertainment, right? So sports media entertainment is a massive market. And it's also a market that people are very interested in applying XR. So, that could be in the form of a wearable that gives you, maybe the person who's at the venue enjoying the game, they've got, kind of their heads up display and their replay and everything that you have at home, but they have it in their head mounted display or in their glasses. So that's one area. But I think you talked about something on the entertainment side that is emerging in this concept of virtual entertainment or virtual travel, right? So there's some really cool things you can do today that I think, are pretty exciting. One of them is, there's a lot of these live 360 streaming cams that are around the world, right? So if you want to travel, you can, get a pair of, actually the Google glasses will even do it, right? You can put your phone in the Google Cardboard, just, really inexpensive. And you can go and log onto a site and stream the live streaming video right into your glasses and actually be there, right? So you're live. You can watch the sunset in Greece because there's a camera there and you get to actually be there. I mean, it doesn't quite get the whole thing done, but I think you're starting to see people are starting to accept that form of experience as a compromise, especially now. Nobody can really easily get on a plane and go somewhere, but you know what? They might want to, kind of mentally escape their current home and be immersed and enjoy that. There's one other really cool thing, though, about immersion, right? So virtual reality, a full immersive virtual reality, it captivates all of your senses. And so I think that the challenge we have when we're on, I'll say conference calls or a video call is the distractions, the distractibility, right? We're all naturally wired for information, on the fringe, right? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely a classical ADD type person. I'm seeing a lot. It's like, it's hard. It's really hard to focus when you're not somewhere and you're not personally engaged in a conversation, right? So one thing that immersive technology does is it basically, it locks you in and it's got full captivation of your senses. And so if you're delivering content or media or experience inside of that virtual environment, you've got them locked in. They can't get easily distracted. And so I think we can probably, start to leverage that technology more for large type of like conferences, right? We're not quite there yet, right? Because, to apply that technology to a conference, you have to stream oftentimes, it's technically very heavy. But we are working with companies right now, a couple different projects that they're taking content from their conferences and streaming specific pieces, right? And so I think that's where we're going to start to see that immersive tech start to enter into the conference arena. And I think just like everything else, it'll progress. Each time someone learns a little bit and it goes through that cycle of revision until pretty soon, that's how we choose to actually attend a lot of things.
Yeah, it's all pretty amazing stuff. Part of me thinks about, is this accelerating business or buying decisions, or is this slowing it down in a way? Like, is it a mix of both? It does like kind of say like, in some ways, does this make a conference, even more impactful faster, or are you missing something? I'd actually just kind of want to know your opinion. Greg, what do you think on your side? And I'll ask Moody too.
I think it's doing both. I think that, I think when you're planning an immersive experience or, anything, it's almost like a schedule or a little bit too structured. And when you go to an event, oftentimes it's what you learn from being there is why you go, right? If it was just a matter of consuming content, you can do that. You can watch YouTube. You can attend these types of sessions. But when the formal session is over and, your friends are in the hall and then you decide to go, down and grab a bite to eat together and you have a different conversation, right? Those are the types of things that we miss. And I don't think that technology is quite ready to bridge those gaps. I think we talked about the other day, just sitting down and having lunch with somebody, it's a different kind of communication than you would have when you were online together or if you were in a meeting together. And so, I think we have a long way to go to completely bridge that entire communication gap, but it's what we can achieve, which has, it has grown incredibly, right? So I think we have to just maximize the value of what we can do today with the tech. And as the technology and the hardware and the infrastructure continues to evolve, it'll provide a richer and richer and richer experience, and to the point where it is just part of every day. Like, my younger kids, your child, they're gonna grow up in a world where these resources and this information layer has completely matured around them, and it's just going to be part of the life they live. I compare it to when my kids were really young. My daughter, I showed her, a screen. She walked up to a screen. She was doing something, and her instinct was to touch it and play with it. And when it didn't respond to her touch because she was used to the iPads and stuff, she's like, it's broke, because she grew up with touch vocabulary, just like a verbal vocabulary, right? And so the next generation that follows is going to grow up with that augmented layer of information around them. It's going to just be part of their life. They're going to be used to it. They're going to grow up with it, and they're going to use it differently than we do.
Yeah, it's a crazy, we try to keep screens away from my baby, but she somehow finds them, and it doesn't help being in technology. But and she sees a magazine or something, it's almost like it's a broken iPad. I don't get it. Why is this thing not moving or anything like that? But so Moody, on your side, do you have any thoughts on that? In terms of is XR this virtual conference or the virtual trip Like, is that going to slow down business or accelerate business? You know,
I think, one of the things Greg hit on was like, really making that personal connection with someone. That's something that like is really tough to do with technology. I know like myself, I've been to a ton of different business conferences. They all start looking very the same after a while. And then one of the best ones I went to had a poker, Texas Hold'em poker networking. And that's kind of how you got to meet people. So it was like, 300 people, and it got whittled down to, like 30 tables, and it got whittled down to like one table. And this was, after dinner. So there were some drinks going and stuff as well. So, you're having fun, you're playing cards, and you're networking with people. And so I think that, could be a way, like you have to bring some of these like bring some of these gaming ideas into networking to be able to have some of these personal connections. You need to have more than just, hey, here's my products. Like it needs to be more than just like a website, type thing. Like, here's my products, here's my offering, here's who we are. You need to be able to like engage and really get to know someone more on a personal level. And I think gaming is a great way to do that. And like maybe Sean, you can talk a little bit about like what you've been seeing in your game, like kind of these personal connections and bonds being formed.
Yeah, definitely a part of what Greg has said is true, even with current technology, right? It's really hard to physically replicate, a real personal interaction. I mean, we're just not 100% there yet, but we're really close. And I think we're closer than a lot of people realize. Now, there's some things that we're still probably a few years away from, but I think you guys kind of touched on a lot of this. But it's really interesting right now, like in virtual battlegrounds. And if any of you guys have have ever done any other social VR applications, such as VR chat, a lot of other games out there, it's strangely social. It's strangely real. Even though they're avatars and they're animated, and that's not a real person you're looking at. There's a real person behind the wheel. And I've experienced social anxiety in these situations. It's creating a much more human experience than I think has ever been done before. And I think we're not as far away from getting close to where it is meeting people in real life right now in VR. Now, I still think we have more time to go. There's more stuff to go. But I think one of the biggest challenges we're actually going to be facing is not so much, is this close to real, or does it create those similar situations, but accessibility for your average user. And like right now, for example, we're all in a Zoom call. We're looking at a monitor where there's video portraying and there's people watching, and that's accepted, that's normal. But if we were to take this piece of technology as it exists right now, Zoom, right, and we were to give that to our parents, right, or our grandparents, and we're to be like, hey, use this, they'd be like, well, why would I? Like the friction alone is insane. And that, I think, is one of the problems that exists right now with these new technologies. Isn't so much can it be done, but how accessible is it? And I think both the accessibility and the viability needs to improve. I think the viability is closer than people realize, but I think the accessibility has a long way to go. There's not really a standardization of how do people meet virtually, right? There's a ton of apps, there's a ton of things. I think it's going to change soon. And I think it's going to be a lot more uniform than people realize. I don't think you're going to have 35 apps for meetings and 10 apps for events. I think there's probably going to be a Facebook in VR, right? And people are going to use that. There's going to be a Zoom and people are going to use that. But I don't think those players have been discovered yet. And I think we're quite a few years away from really discovering who those players are going to be. But it's coming. It's coming. And I think the biggest hurdle will be, like I said, I like friction and accessibility. I think a lot of people, even when these things become a norm, are not going to do it just because they prefer to use older methods. So, and we'll see where that lands up. But we're going there.
Yeah. Do you have any data on like new VR users playing your game, like folks that are totally new to VR, kind of how they're, figuring out the gameplay controls and, things like that? Because I know, like, just like a personal anecdote is like we got my dad up and running on the Quest in like 2 minutes, and my dad is like, totally, out of technology. Like he'll like call one of my brothers to send an email sort of thing. So,
yeah.
So just curious to hear like how people are taking on this new technology, like in your game.
That's a great question. So I've got a lot of experience here demoing virtual reality to new people, and there's two interesting things for new people. So one is there's some things about it, and this is what I think we need to push further, and I think game developers are kind of doing a bad job at this. But there's one thing we need to push further, and that's doesn't matter who it is. It could be your grandmother, it could be anyone. You put them in VR, and they immediately understand some things, which is, hey, I can look around, hey, I can walk around, and hey, I can reach my hands out to touch things, right? This is why I think Beat Saber is such a successful video game, is it relies entirely on things that human beings natively know just by existing in our current environment. Now, where I think the big problem is, and this is where people struggle with our game and struggle with a lot of other games, is we're not just relying on that alone in order to do things, we're relying on controllers. And if you ever hand someone an Xbox controller who doesn't play video games, they're going to be terrible and they're going to have a bad time. There's at least a day or two of playing required in order to get good at the game. And that, I think, is one of the big problems right now with VR is people that aren't gamers, right, aren't using controllers all the time. There's a level of difficulty of getting them in there. Now, maybe generationally that will shift in time, as just like, today people can use computers like it's another part of their body. Maybe that'll shift in time, but right now a lot of people aren't gamers and they're having a hard time associating those controls. Now, there's a couple ways you can go about this, right? So one would be we just rely entirely on our normal senses, or it's going to be a generational shift, and I don't know which one of those is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is coming for sure. Like, definitely there's people like my parents and grandparents and stuff like that who are like, I don't know, my mom, like, one is like, she's an immigrant to this country. So like, there's a little bit of language adoption, but, she's like, Kunal, go to the .com and look this up for me. So it's like, it's a shift, but, as younger generations, the ones that are using Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok, and it's just like second nature. Things are going to be different. I'm somewhere in the middle. Like I've been around technology for a long time, but I remember life before it too. And I feel like guilty. I lose like some of my nerd cred because like I haven't watched it yet. But like I've been hearing about this Travis Scott concert in Fortnite, and for some people who are in it, they're singing its praises, and other people it's like, wait, what is that? Like, Sean, can you enlighten us a little bit about this? Like, because that seems like a very social thing, a concert.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, seriously, go on YouTube right now, or after this call, or whenever you got some downtime.
Yeah,
after this call, go on YouTube and look up the Travis Scott Fortnite concert. Now, whether or not you're a fan of the rapper doesn't really matter. It's the event itself is really, really impressive. What I guess is important for this conversation is, there's a lot of talk about, virtual events, virtual concerts, these different virtual things. And Fortnite is kind of pushing new ground here, right? Epic Games is pushing new ground here with the Travis Scott Fortnite. What's it going to be like when you can do something like that in VR with your friends, right? Like, we're not super far away from that. And it's really, really, really cool. I think there were 40 or 50 million people watched that concert. It's like they broke records, or we're in that one and watched it live. We're talking in the game live. That's like, has any concert ever done that before? Like, that's insane. What's it going to be like when we can do that in VR? I mean, imagine, just watch that YouTube video. Tell me you wouldn't want to be there in VR, guys. It's really cool, and we're not super far away from that. So.
I think that's amazing. Going to a concert, is an experience in itself. But I mean, like, you go in an arena, there's like 10,000 people, 12,000 people. But to say that like millions of people are experiencing something at the same time, like.
And then to think about the music festivals, this is a large way that the artists are, kind of touring and making their money now is through these, 2-3 day music festivals, sometime like a week-long music festival. And then start thinking about the scale of a music festival in VR, or even an event like, we were supposed to go to South by Southwest. Like, imagine a South by Southwest style of event in VR.
Yeah, I was thinking too. It's like if you're the entertainer, one of the gripes they always have is that the venue and the ticket outlets take all the money, right? So, and there's some limitations there. So I have to believe there's some smart people behind how these entertainers are going to, take advantage of the ability to have concerts with 50 million people versus just maybe 10,000, 12,000. So if they're not, they can come talk to me. So.
Yeah, this all like does bring up like good points. The economies of everything changes. I was a huge basketball fan in the 90s and 2000s. I kind of fell off after a while, and I've been watching this documentary, The Last Dance. It's following the Chicago Bulls, and they've been bringing up these things of the NBA actually didn't pay its players that well for a long time. Like not like today where, there's like $30 million a year or something like that. It was like just a few million. And something changed when they got a television deal because now billions of people could see the NBA. And that changed the economies of the whole league. And now I got to think something like that with like virtual presence where instead of just the 15,000 people in an arena seeing something, you could have like 10 million. Well, that's got to change the economics of things, for the people hosting it, the actual performers. Yep. That's something I got to imagine is happening. We have a few minutes left. So I want to like put it out there to the attendees. If you have any questions, please send them through, so you guys can be able to answer live. I see a comment here about Second Life, and I vaguely remember that from a few years ago. It almost feels like it was something ahead of its time. It was like 3D in a browser, but you weren't wearing VR. And I kind of feel like that's kind of where things are going now. I see that there's a question that came through, and it's from Moody. How does BrandXR help partners get out of POC purgatory and realize XR use cases? So POC, if you guys don't know what that means, is proof of concept. It's generally like enterprises, they want to dip their toe in, like they don't want to write a big check initially, like, so they got to test it.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And even Greg, I saw one of the Unity enterprise reports come out just the other day that said 2020 is the year that XR is growing up and kind of getting out of this proof of concept, prototype phase. But yeah, I think like this kind of pandemic is one of those accelerators, I believe, because, there's a lot of folks who now, are figuring out how to sell their products online, just for the first time, like on the base level, like you can see companies like Shopify and Squarespace and Wix that are, their stock prices are booming and their users are booming because now all these people are trying to switch over to have a digital presence. And so I think, like the concept of like a pre-purchase experience where I can visualize what I'm going to buy, especially with like bigger ticket purchases, like a car, where I can visualize the car in my driveway, pick out the different features, pick out the different rims, pick out, open up the hood, look under the hood, check out the engine, look through the different engine options, and then eventually like schedule a test drive, maybe have in this day and age, have a driver, someone from the dealership come pick me up at my house and take me on a test drive with that car. Because in Michigan for the past, over a month, all of the car dealerships have been shut down and not one car, has been sold. And so I think that's something that a lot of companies need to figure out is, how can we get our customers super comfortable with spending $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on a purchase without going and touching and feeling and having that normal car buying experience. And so, yeah, I'm sure Greg has seen a lot as well. So, Greg, how are companies like moving from that proof of concept now to like larger scale XR programs?
Yeah, at a high level, it comes down to a couple things, right? How does this real-time capability and XR allow you to be highly productive and communicate effectively, right? And And a lot of the, I'll say, the trials and some of the early adoption, some of that that's been going on the last few years, I think it's really kind of flushed out like the most effective place to leverage these technologies right now. And so companies are doing it. They're doing it everywhere. We talked about this the other day. You know, if companies don't have a digital strategy, or they didn't have a digital strategy a month ago, I'm guaranteeing that they're working on it right now, right? And so it is absolutely critical. It doesn't matter what you make or what you sell, you have to have a digital form of communication, because that is the form of communication that's preferential today, right? People shop online. They might actually go experience that physical product, especially a premium or expensive purchase. They're going to want to experience it live, but you can really cut down, you know, how much physical interaction you might need. And actually, I have some great data points, right? In the automotive business, you know, over the last 10 years, due to technology and your ability to explore and research and find inventory online, you know, that average visit to the dealers has tremendously declined. You know, it was, I think the average person made 2 to 3 trips to the dealership when they were shopping for cars historically. Now they make 1, or not even 1, but the average is 1, because they're going there to transact the purchase, right? They actually have to get it. They want to test drive it. So it's really changed the way that marketers approach that end user consumer, just because they know that those buying habits have changed. So we're seeing it change a lot of things. And again, sometimes it's going to be revolutionary in the way it changes business, and sometimes it's going to be evolutionary. And I think we're seeing some companies do it differently.
I was going to say another thing that I like about that is, you know, on the visualization side with AR, it's what you see is what you get. So there's no, you know, like switcheroos, or there's no anything like that. You know, you are literally placing the product either inside of your own home, exactly where you want it to go, or, you know, even trying it on your own face. Eventually, I think, you know, these technologies are coming. We'll be able to try on, you know, clothes and things like that on our bodies. And it's really, you know, getting that visualization correct, I think, is one of the most important things. And, you know, I think that's a lot of the reason why we don't have like virtual clothes try-ons is like super popular right now, because, you know, getting the clothes to hang correctly on the body and kind of form correctly on the body is tough. But you're seeing the makeup companies use it now with trying on makeup on faces, and you know, companies like Warby Parker using it to try on glasses, and you know, really seeing an increase in sales from that. And that's today. You know, that's literally today, and it's kind of become almost table stakes in the furniture industry to have an augmented reality experience where you can visualize the furniture, you know, in your own home, and be able to, you know, take photos and videos and share that, like, you know, with your wife. Hey, how does this look, sort of thing. So yeah, I think we're going to continue to see a lot more of that. And then also you're getting advances on the consumer technology, like on the iPhones with LiDAR. And that's going to help folks be able to scan their own objects themselves. So if you're a small business owner, you could 3D scan your product, you know, with your own cell phone, and then, you know, be able to create an AR experience with that and kind of put it all together. So that's super exciting. That's coming like within the next year or so.
Yeah. You know, there's just a few more questions, and I think, you know, we'll wrap it up, but, you know, I'll pass this along to a few of you. Somebody asked Bobby T, Unity, doing any notable projects or updates in mobile AR? Greg, anything you can share about what's coming up in the future?
Yeah, just at a high level, you know, we're always making incremental advances, right? So in our, you know, AR capabilities, you know, there's been some new additions put into version 19.3. You know, anybody that's interested in getting on like the Unity beta, absolutely, you know, if you're using Unity today, you can download those .release betas and get access to the latest and greatest. But yeah, we're continuing to push the envelope. If anybody, yeah, I'll say any manufacturer that's coming out with AR, VR, XR technology or what have you, I can guarantee you we're working with them in some format. And so as those companies push the envelope from a hardware perspective and what camera-based technology can do, we need our engine to support that. And so I can just say, at a high level, there's, an army of people that work on that within Unity. And, if anybody is taking a progressive approach at enabling more of that experience, it's definitely us. I don't have the time on the call to go through all the feature updates, but we did just do a release update last month. So you can go through it online if you like.
Awesome. Somebody also asked, what is the best way to test XR experiences? Any tips? I'll throw that to you, Sean.
Obviously, I guess it depends on, who it is you're demoing for. I'm going to assume this is for a B2B scenario. I found it really, first you got to evaluate the person you're trying to test. Has this person spent a lot of time in VR? I actually demoed something recently to my uncle who doesn't play video games, doesn't do anything in VR. To spend some time with that person outside of VR, explaining to them how the controls work. I actually think if it's someone who's really new to VR, something really smart to do is to just play them through, whether it's Oculus or Steam, play them through like their tutorial they have that just teaches them about VR and like the buttons and stuff, or else you're going to be doing that for the next 30 minutes. After that point, it depends on what it is you're trying to do and how much time you have that person. Something that really sells people on VR, if they're kind of new to it, is a lot of like the experiences that require very little interactivity. There was the one the Blue made. That was called the Blue, and it was just a whale floating by you. And you put someone in that who's never done VR before, they're like, "Whoa, it's amazing!" But then, obviously, if it's someone you don't have a lot of time with, maybe it's a client you're trying to demonstrate a product to, it can be a little trickier. Very, very, very hands-on in those scenarios where it's just, "Hey, this is how you do this. This is how you do that." And hopefully, if the application's good, that'll help you a lot in your ability to gain interest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and I would just add, like on the AR side, you want to be able to test like in different conditions. So there's like certain things that like mobile AR doesn't like. So like reflections and lighting and things like this. When you're talking about like image targets, you just want to make sure to test. Like for example, on like one of our projects, Electrify, we will make augmented reality art pieces and put them on various different types of merchandise. So like t-shirts and pins and prints, and we even have a skateboard coming out. So AR skateboards are going to be a thing. So, but yeah, you actually have to test like the actual products in various different lighting conditions, and just to make sure it works and make sure it tracks correctly and make sure you're getting the user experience that you want, out of it. So yeah, I would just say you have to test it. There's no way of getting around it.
Yeah. Well, I think we've had a lot of different like topics we've talked about, a lot of discussion points, a lot of really good nuggets. And we want to thank everybody for sharing your time with us. Thank you, Greg, for making the time. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Moody. We can't wait to do another one of these. This is the first in a series of many. So there's going to be other ones maybe focused on education, on healthcare, on other use cases where we'll do even deeper dives with other guests as well. And we can't wait to have Greg and Sean back again later on, because XR is
That'd be great. Sounds good.
Thank you all. Before we go, real quick, now that, slowly quarantine is letting up and we're able to kind of get out there, tell me one thing that you guys are looking forward to doing out there in the real world again.
I'm looking forward to getting out on my boat. So my family, we got a boat last year. So my kids and everyone's like, we want to go on a boat. So like, yeah, I'm ready for some warm weather as those that are Michigan based. Not all of us are going to be in Florida or Orlando. We really look forward to the warm weather. So I'm looking forward to that. That's for sure. And, I never thought I'd say it. I'm not, I guess I'm missing the airport a little bit. I could do a flight, but maybe just one.
Yeah, that's cool. Sean, what are you looking forward to?
Wait, there's been a quarantine? Oh, that whole outside.
For the gamer's life, yeah, it's just like, this is regular life.
I've been training my whole life for this. No, I'm just kidding. I'm looking forward to going to the beach. I need some sun. and that'll
There
be
you go.
nice. Maybe see my friends in person. That'd be nice. I
That'd
think
be
just
good.
seeing my friends, honestly, is the thing in person is the thing I miss the most.
Moody, you?
I would say, yeah, I think seeing my friends in person, and then just like it would be nice to go to a concert, you know, just to have like to even just to see like a big group of people together. I think like would be a nice thing now, and everyone like getting along and, you know, having a good time, this sort of thing. Like I think that would be good.
I'm actually supposed to be in Europe right now with my mom. It was like a trip we'd planned for like a couple of years, so I'm pretty upset about that. So as soon as this goes over, I'm actually really looking forward to traveling.
Well, you know, thank you all for sharing your time, your wisdom, and to all of you, we'll have this up as a podcast and recording real soon. You know, curses to Corona. It feels like it's on its way out. So we're all thankful and happy for that. And with that, thank you all, and we'll see you next time.